Hello everyone, this is Garrett again. I'm going to bring you a quick tutorial on Hyper-V, setting up the defaults with a networking hard drive and boot up for your Hyper-V, and then setting up the virtual machine to use on your computer. First step, we're going to have to open up Control Panel. Since I'm on Windows 8 here, basically Start X. We'll open up this little menu here as you see popped up in the corner. You're going to click Control Panel. Once the Control Panel is open, I'm one of those people that likes the category view. It's quick and easy, simple. Some people might like it in this view or sometimes the large icon view. But we're going to go to category view, find the uninstalled program, click Start, and then on the left side you have turn on Windows features and turn them off. In this case I already have Hyper-V installed, but what you're going to need to do is if you want to have Hyper-V on the same machine that you're wanting to access and store the machines on, you're going to have to install both. The management tool allows you to manage Hyper-V, and then the Hyper-V platform is actually what's used to have the virtual machines run. So as you notice, I have both installed. Once you check that main box right there, you're going to click OK. Upon clicking OK, it's going to probably start installing the modules. You're going to most likely have to reboot. You might reboot twice if need be, but it's usually pretty quick. Once you do that, you'll have the Hyper-V manager here. So I'm going to click Start, type in Hyper. As you can tell, I have a virtual machine connection. This is for me to connect to the Hyper-Vs. But what I want to do is go into the Hyper-V manager. This is my manager right here. As you can tell, it will have it listed at, probably you'll start at this view. On the left side, it has it listed as Hyper-V manager and then what servers you have. So if I really need to, I can type in here, type in another machine. If you're on a domain, you can browse for that. So browse your domain and then search for it. But in this case, I'm not on a domain or anything special, and I have no other server at the moment with Hyper-V. So we're going to go to Shijin's PC. This is my machine right here. As you can tell, I already have a virtual, but I'm going to go over the basics of how Hyper-V is set up. So over here, we're going to go to Virtual Switch Manager. On the Virtual Switch Manager, you will usually have a default switch, or you might have to make one. So if you create a new one, you can choose external, internal, or private. External means it's basically your computer acts as a switch. There's no PAT or NAT between. It's out to the open. Internal means it only can access anything on that machine. And if you do private, it's basically acting like a router. Your machine's going to act like a router, so it's going to be able to be NAT or PATted through to get internet, but nobody else can see it unless you make some type of rule to come back in. The default here, as I have set up as external, this is everything on my network. Since it's a home network, I'm not too worried about other people getting into my machine. And secondly, I'd rather be available on the network. You'll choose the card that you want. As you can tell, I have two here. This is for VPN, but you're not going to want that. You want the primary card that's connected to with that Ethernet cord on your machine. As you can tell, I talked about internal and private. Also down here we have VLANs. So say if you need to make sure you have a VLAN tag, and this is definitely for business networks or schools or a bigger network. You might need to set up virtual tagging to this. You can also do this to this virtual switch. And last thing but least, always name it for what you need it to be. In this case, I set it as a default. I'm not going to have more than one switch on this machine. This is more of a test machine for you guys to see and how to do this. So I'm going to click OK. They also have an access for Virtual SAN Manager. I have no SAN, so I'm not going to be able to set this up on you. But you can create a virtual SAN. Once you do that, you connect it and do some other things for it. But I'm not going to go into detail on that. So the first step is we need to create a new virtual machine. After you have all that set up, you're going to have to do a new virtual machine right here. Once you do that, you're going to get this basic wizard. The wizard's just going to kind of give you a basic overview. I'm going to click Next here. So name the virtual machine. I already have a Windows 10 preview, but I'm just going to go Windows 10. As you can tell, my numlock's off here. Okay, Windows 10. Also, I want to store the virtual machine on my C drive, even though that's my fastest drive on my machine. I don't have a lot of storage there. So we're going to go down, choose my Z drive, and choose Hyper-V here. Select. So it's going to be stored in another location. You can leave this unchecked, but I'm going to uncheck it and move it. You have Generation 1 and Generation 2. I'll have a little bit more details on that a little bit below. There's a link to the Microsoft resource. I'm going to go Generation 2 since it allows more compatibility and more features that I would like to have at the moment. Not like I'm going to be using most of those. So we have our startup memory. Start memory, I'm going to give it 124. I'm going to also check dynamic. We'll go more in depth on the dynamic memory here after I have this fully set up. So click Next. Configure network. As you can tell, it's not connected to anything. We want to add an Ethernet cord. You leave it at not connected. You're not going to have any Ethernet or LAN cord connected to this virtual, so it's not even able to get on the network. I want it on the network, so I'm going to choose my virtual switch I created. Also, you'll notice that you don't see your LAN pop up. That's because that's not a switch. This connection is supposed to be finding switches that it's allowed to access. So, click next. Now we're on the hard drive. A little bit of detail on the hard drive. You have your size here. In this case, I'm going to use a smaller drive. If you're using Linux, you probably only need maybe a 60 gig drive unless you're doing something special on it. Also, just so you know, as you can tell, I chose the Hyper-V folder earlier. You can see that it's creating a new folder called Windows 10, the name of this virtual, and then it's going to say virtual disk. The reason why there's a subfolder of virtual disks, you can have multiple onto each virtual machine, so it's up to you on that. Another option is say if you had a virtual machine on another machine, you can move it over or network map it and use existing and go and find it. Last thing, you can attach it later. So say if you need to just set up the shell and then need to attach to the hard drive to it, you can. But we're done. Create a new parse right here. Okay, and this is installation options. You can currently install it later. You can boot from an image, or you can install network based. So scan the network for a network based server installation if anybody has that. Most of the time you're going to probably be choosing off an image. I'm going to go here. I'm going to choose this image. Or you can install later by selecting the image. We're going to go next. As you can tell, you have the basic details of what I just did. So we're going to click finish here. You get a window pop up saying what it's configuring, creating. Okay, so we have our Windows 10 machine here. Before I turn it on or run it, I'm going to go to settings. The reason why I went into settings is to kind of give you an overview. These settings will be everything. It's kind of like opening up your home computer if you had a physical machine in front of you, but instead this is virtual, so you get a nice little GUI. Firmware. This is going to tell you how you can make it boot, if you need to use SCSI, UEFI. In this case, it's currently set to boot off the DVD drive. We have our memory down here that we set. We have startup RAM of 1 gig, and then the dynamic I checked. Before I wasn't able to configure it, now I can. As you can tell, it's really huge. You're not going to have that much RAM in your machine. So we're going to go 192 here. That's 8 gigs, and we're going to start it off at 1024. So it automatically starts with 1 gig. Memory buffer, that's just a lot of buffer for it. Okay, this little memory weight thing is a little bit of a prioritize. Is say if you need this machine to always have memory access to it, you might raise this. Generally, you'll leave it at this basis. Just be remembering it's kind of like the processes in Task Manager. If you set it to ultra high or very high, you'll probably lose functionality in a lot of things. In this case, it's pretty good at not doing that, but higher you set it, more this is going to use your memory before your actual physical machine here. Next thing you need to know is processor. Number of processors, I'm set it to default of 1. I'm going to set it up to 2 since I have 2 physical cores, 8 virtual cores in this case. You can find that out by opening up Task Manager here. Then go into Performance. And you're not going to see this view here, but I'm going to change this over. You'll probably see a view like this. Down here you'll see sockets. I only have 1 processor. It has 4 cores on that processor and then 4 virtual processors on top of those cores. So that means per core I have 2 virtual processors. Virtualization tells you if it's enabled. So if you don't have virtualization enabled, you're not going to probably be able to install Hyper-V. Usually throw you an error. The other thing you need to know is whenever you do the processors, number of cores, it's basically right now I'm using all 8 of my cores. Well, 4 of my cores, 8 logical or virtual processors at the moment. When you set 2, it's going to try to utilize 2 of them. If you raise the weight of how much it can use it, it's going to be more this has access to those 2 cores while your computer has the rest of these cores. It does share, so your computer might be using these 2 cores while the virtual is using these 2 cores, but it's going to always make sure that everybody has access to the cores here. So after we get out of that, you're going to go down here. This is your hard drive. If you need to attach another hard drive, you just select the SCSI controller right here. You can choose the DVD drive or a hard drive and click Add. Next thing you need to know is right here. You have your virtual machine. It'll tell you what slot you need to put it in, and it'll tell you what use you can set. You can set a lot of drives on here if you wanted to, but you don't need to do that. Another thing is you have Edit. This allows you to edit that disk. You can choose Next and allow you to compact it, convert it, or expand it if you need be. In case you say how I set it to 64 gigs, if I hit that 64 gig limit and I need to expand it, that's where I need to expand it. Inspect will usually check the integrity of it, if it's fully attached, if there's issues on there. As you can tell, this basic file is only 4 megs at the moment. Maximum is allowed to 64. Next down here we have our DVD drive. Usually if you didn't select the ISO like I did in the wizard, you're going to have it selected to none, and then you can go here and browse. There's also a third way to do this. Now we have our network adapter. Back to that virtual LAN, VLAN thing. You can also monetize the bandwidth usage, so it can't use too much at one point. This is good for throttling in case, say if you have a server that does Wasus, and it's on a virtual, you can manage its bandwidth, make sure the Wasus server gets more bandwidth than this virtual machine, just to make sure everything stays equal and up and running. Down here is just kind of what you can see what the integration does. This is the Hyper-V integration. I'll kind of show you a little bit of that. I have a name. You can set a note to it to kind of explain what it is. We have our checkpoint folder. As you can tell where it's located, this is where it's going to store all the checkpoints. We have our smart paging. Smart paging is just where it's just basically how your physical machine has paging. It's going to store the virtual's paging here. We have an automatically startup if stopped. It also has a delay. You can make it where it does nothing on start action, so it doesn't start up at all. Usually the default's the best way to go unless you don't need that virtual machine running. And then there's the automatic stop. So say if you shut down, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to save, shut it down, or turn off the virtual machine? So usually you'll use a default, or you'll have it send a shutdown command to the guest operating system, wait for it to shut down, and then the whole machine shuts down. If you do turn off, it's just going to kill the machine. It's kind of like hitting the power button on your physical. So after you have all that set up, we're done. Click apply, click OK. Before turning it on again, we're done. Just click connect. This is your little console window that you get with the virtual machine here. I'm going to kind of expand it a little bit. Nope. So I don't have the machine on. It doesn't allow me to expand it. My bad. Some few options here. You can go file settings, open up the settings again for that virtual. You have action up here. Control delete, as you can see listed right here, is controlled end. When you're on the virtual machine, you don't want to go control delete because you might pop up that task manager like this window right here. Doop. Once you pop up that window, you kind of can't get into the virtual machine. So what they did is they made it where you can click control end while you're in this machine, and it doesn't pop up. It will send control delete into that virtual machine for you. You have your start, shutdown, save options. Next thing, you have your checkpoints, like I was talking about. Checkpoints or save points or snapshots, however you want to call them. Usually checkpoints and snapshots are intertwined between each other. What you can do is say if you installed the operating system, you choose checkpoint. Upon clicking checkpoint, you can install something else, and say if that something else worked, you can make another checkpoint after that. Or say if that thing that you installed after the previous checkpoint broke the whole system, you can revert back to the previous checkpoint so that you can always have an operating system running. Usually when you do a checkpoint, it might be right after you install the operating system and after you do major updates. Like say if you have a server virtual, you'll install the operating system. Once you install the operating system, you make a checkpoint. Then you'll install IIS or DNS or whatever features you need. Make sure it's all running there, and then make another checkpoint. So then you have a good running state. So you have a good install, good running state, and then in case anything breaks farther down the line, you might take a checkpoint every month or every week, depending on what your policy is, as long as it's running correctly. And that allows you to check and change back and forth between which ones was working, which one wasn't, in case something broke in time. Or before you do a major update, you might do a checkpoint and then do that update. So as you can tell, we have revert here. That's to revert back to a previous checkpoint. And then finally, but not least, is insert integration service setup disk. This just allows Hyper-V to integrate. That falls back to these settings right here. As you see, integration services, you have operation shutdown, so it can send a shutdown command through Hyper-V. Time synchronization, data exchange, heartbeat, so we can make sure it's up. This is great for if you have a high availability setup. So in case, say this Hyper-V was not running on this server correctly, the other server can kick in and pop it on, or in case that drive went dead, it'll find the next drive. It depends on how you have it set up on that part. And then there's the checkpoint. It's basically a full backup when you run that. The third thing I was talking about, third way that you can do it, say if I eject this drive here, this is your media. This is the DVD drive that you have attached. You can go insert disk, and you just choose that preview here, and it'll reload it open. View just allows you to change how you see it. And then the help is a little bit of information about what this Hyper-V is running, what the build is, and all that information.